And just like before, when we did about dogs and monkeys and alligators and all of that, I'm going to talk about locusts today. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, inshallah, today we're going to be continuing with our Tafseer, and let's see right there, just go over some of the things that we had done yesterday, and let's see, ألا إنما طائرهم عند الله. So basically, yesterday we pretty much focused on something called the tiyara, which is really superstition. And we said with superstition, Islam is really strict about it and making it clear that superstition is not at all something that is acceptable because it involves believing that other things basically have the power to know the future, know the past, or know anything about al-ghaib. And certainly that's a form of shirk. But of course, the people of the Pharaoh, they wanted to use that method to somehow relate to why all the extraordinary things that are happening to them. And certainly we're talking about the extraordinary things that started coming to them because they were going against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So certainly we went in some details about some of those hadith and some of that culture that was practiced basically in regards to superstition, and some of it is still there. So some superstition, it still happens, and people practice different forms of superstition, whether it's talking about the zodiac and all that horoscope stuff, and talking about fortune at that time, the fortune cookies. They were something that people would, use in order to somehow relate to knowing the future and so forth. But Islam basically wanted to build a personality that is dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and relates to reality and not relates to imagination, or lets things that are not realistic get them into being fearful of the future or being fearful of the past, but taught us to look for not signs, but look for realistic signs in order to decide whether this is the right decision making or not. So we were basically at this ayah. وَقَالُوا مَهْمَا تَأْتِنَا بِهِ مِنْ آيَةٍ لِتَسْحَرَنَا بِهَا فَمَا نَحْنُ لَكَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And certainly the ayah before it, فَإِذَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْحَسَنَةُ قَالُوا لَنَا هَذِهِ. So whenever something good happens to them, they basically had considered that it was their investment. It was as a result of a good thing that they had done. But whenever something evil happens to them, they would claim that it was as a result of Prophet Musa alayhi salam bringing a bad omen. And certainly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was breaking all that superstition and letting them know that this is a completely delusional way of analyzing all of this. But that was also another thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will squeeze them, will let them go through certain hardships in order to let go of themselves connecting to such items and connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we talked a little about that, or actually in lots of details about that. And we did say something very important, that one method for tazkiyah, and this is one thing that a lot of times Sufi groups will do, and the sheikh will mentor the murid. Okay, the sheikh will mentor the murid. The sheikh will know information about this murid. Murid is basically the student, and then the sheikh, looking at the situation, will recommend perhaps part of the things is to let go a lot of the different resources that they have. So they'll say, what is that distracting element? Is it maybe the home? Is it all the shopping? What is the daily regimen looking like? What do you do? How much time do you spend on your phone? How much time do you spend on friends? How much how much money are you spending on items, on extra items? Do you really need that coffee every day? Do you really need this cookie every day, or these donuts or sweets or whatever? And maybe take a picture of your pantry. I want you to reduce the amount of stuff in the pantry to maybe 50%. I want you to only take the very necessary items and then cut it down into 50%. The amount of clothes, I want you to donate 50% of your clothes and just limit them to the necessary things, for example, or maybe, something like that. And certainly to downsize all of that in order to let the person connect with not the dunya, but connect with the akhirah and learn how to give up on materialistic things for the sake of akhirah. And that's the same, let's call it spiritual discipline that Islam even taught us in making fasting for Ramadan, fasting for Mondays and Thursdays, or frequent fasting, or even zakah or donation, etc. So it's always trying to limit that connection between you and the materialistic things around you. And same thing when it comes to time. You could see the ayat many times. It's using time as something that you need to review to make sure that you have your life basically on track, right? So we're looking at one, the materialistic things that you have around you. We're looking at the amount of time you spend on trying to get more of that dunya stuff. We're looking at, so that's time. We're also looking at what you do throughout your day. So we're looking at food. How much consumption are you having for your daily intake? And certainly all of that, just like when you go to the doctor, for example, you go to a therapist, these are questions that they're going to ask you. Same thing if we're speaking about spiritual mentorship. Spiritual mentorship involves these things. I think we actually need these kind of spiritual mentorship to be revived. It really needs to be something that is done at the masajid for us to have kind of like a slip. How much time are you spending on, let's say, this item or that, or doing these chores? How much money are you spending? And what is that percentage of such spending compared to other spendings? How much time are you putting in and investing in learning your deen, in reading Quran, in making dhikr, in teaching your kids, in all of these different things? How many times are you going shopping? How much money do you spend on shopping? How much money do you spend on giving donations, etc.? All of these things, they sometimes need a teacher, a mentor to help the person see these numbers and actually see the contradictions in our life. The contradictions between all the slogans we could be living in and the reality of what we're doing. Sometimes when you see it in numbers, it helps you resonate with the reality of what you need to work on. Look at those numbers. And certainly, maybe learning also how to cut down on, especially when we're speaking about foods, how to cut down on all uh, those products that are basically involving a lot of the preservatives, all of these different chemicals, etc. How to cut down on that in trying to stay as organic and trying to stay as healthy as possible, because once you do that, it will affect your fitra. And now we know, and especially with all those things that we had seen basically come out in public, that yes, some figures, some agenda is out there trying to control our brains, trying to control our motives, trying to control our bodies, and without us knowing. So let's see how we can actually learn how to practice that. Where did we take all of that from? We basically took it from this one. وَلَقَدْ أَخَذْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ بِالسِّنِينَ. And certainly we said السنين is basically talking about drought. وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not take out some of those resources for no reason. But this is an inference that we can learn from this, that some of that type of resource reduction can sometimes be a way for spiritual discipline. And that's what we get out of the word لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَّكَّرُونَ, that this can be a method for spiritual discipline to cut down basically on the resources, whether resources of food or whether we're speaking about the different resources that made your life easier, and to right now go as to trying to live outside of your comfort zone and trying to, let's call it, activate your fitra by activating your body, by activating your brain, and certainly by activating different things in your body. You're going to see your fitra right now going to be stronger, and certainly having those receptors to connect onto the Quran, connect onto the Sunnah, connect onto dhikr a lot better. And this is something that we definitely need this training in our masajid. We don't see a lot of shuyukh talking about this, but I think it's extremely important. Okay, let's see. وَقَالُوا مَهْمَا تَأْتِنَا بِهِ مِنْ آيَةٍ لِتَسْحَرَنَا بِهَا فَمَا نَحْنُ لَكَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And they basically had said, let's see what they had said. They said, مَهْمَا, no matter what ayah or what the word ayah, is that talking about verse, or is this talking about a miracle, or is this talking about a curse, or is this talking about evidence? It's talking about all. It's one, they're definitely referring with this word, that no matter what type of ayah, whether this is a curse to what basically happened to them as all of that drought and the resources basically reducing, all of that, they recognize that this was rather supernatural. They did recognize it was supernatural. So that's why they said, even if that was a supernatural thing, even if that was a verse, even if that was evidence, even if that was an argument, all of that, no matter what you bring, لِتَسْحَرَنَا بِهَا. They basically gave this a narrative that the reason why you're bringing all of this is to do one thing, which is to bring about a delusion, to bring about a form of delusion into using illusion. So now they're calling it an illusion right there. All right, for what? They're calling it an illusion, trying to harm their ability to understand everything, and they're calling it as also bringing in a delusion. And certainly they called it litasharana biha. You're just going here, trying to somehow make us not see things right. That's a sihr right there. And they said, no matter what you do, no matter what evidence you bring, no matter what supernatural things happen, we're just going to read and create a narrative for all that supernatural stuff that you are definitely bringing in. We're just going to call it as magic. We're going to call it a magic. We're going to call it as something that comes with an evil motive. And I want you to look at the word litasharana biha here. When you look at the word litasharna, it's a key word in this sentence, because they did recognize that there was something that was supernatural. They did consider, and they did see it, that there was something that was extraordinary. Why are we getting the drought? Now we're suffering. Is this a curse? But then they didn't want to see that the truth behind such a curse was because this is a result of going and turning and opposing Prophet Musa alayhi salam. So they wanted to give themselves a new narrative that Prophet Musa alayhi salam was the one behind all these supernatural things and that the motive was an evil motive. They just wanted to say, yes, we recognize it's a supernatural thing, but your motive is an evil motive. So they said, فَمَا نَحْنُ لَكَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. They insisted that they will be never embracing Prophet Musa alayhi salam or embracing what Prophet Musa alayhi salam is teaching. So they said, we'll never believe in you. That's when, let's see, فأرسلنا عليهم الطوفان والجراد والقمل والضفادع والدم. What about it? آيات مفصلات فاستكبروا وكانوا قوما مجرمين. But before we get to that one, let's see with this ayah. وقالوا مهما تأتنا به من آية. So let's see, those are the people of Qawm Fir'aun. They said, no matter what evidence, what supernatural thing you bring, we're not going to believe it. Now, here's the thing. The word mahma, is this a word on its own, or is there an etymology for it? In other words, is this supposed to be a word that consists of more than one word? Well, so why is this even important? So when you look in Lugha Arabiya, you can have prepositions, you can have pronouns, you can have, certainly every single language might have certain structures within it. Now, the word mahma, is it ma, or is it ma, meaning one complete word on its own? That's the debate that they debated. So some scholars actually said it actually is ma and ma, and which basically means that they had said no matter what. That how did you get to no matter what in just the word mahma, no matter what? So the first opinion, they said, well, the word mahma is actually ma to mean the first ma, which basically means no matter, and the second ma within this context means what? Two prepositions together. And because it would be hard to say ma, so they basically had that ha to make it an easy composition. That's the first opinion. The second opinion, they basically said, well, no, the word mahma, the first part of it is ma to mean stop. The second ma in it is to actually talk about as a separate word to clarify basically what comes after it. So stop what? So therefore, when the first opinion to say, no matter what you bring from any supernatural thing, you will not delude us away and we will not believe in you. That's the first interpretation. The second interpretation, and they said, stop all that. And no matter what, stop all that. And all that you bring in all the supernatural things to delude us, we will still not be believers in it. So it really gives the same, I would say, the same sentiment, the same idea, but I just wanted you to just know some of the scholars and how they basically would break down those words. Let's see how they translated that, especially that we have two different opinions on the etymology of it. So this is ayah 132. Let's go to it. Oh dear, it's taking me somewhere else. No, here we go, 135. Let's go to 132. And they said, no matter what sign you may bring to deceive us, we will never believe in you. And they said, no matter, no matter. So let's see. This one said, whatever ayat. This one's different. Whatever. So let's see. All of them, they said, whatever. Okay. Ayat proofs of evidences, lessons, signs, revelations. Let's see let's see other ones and what they said. Let's see. no matter what sign, they all said sign. This one was actually going in more details with the word ayah. So they're including the proofs, the evidence, the verses, the signs. They should have actually included the curse, because there was a curse that they were realizing as coming to them. So they wanted to say that supernatural curse that happened to them, that which made them recognize a certain pattern. But none of them actually said that. Let's see here. Anybody? And they said, whatever sign you might produce. I actually like this word that they had said. You might produce. And I love how he said it, because whatever sign you might produce, because that's what they considered. Remember when we said the word litasharana, they regarded that there was a supernatural thing, but the evil motive is basically the narrative that they had created, that it was a supernatural thing that Prophet Musa alayhi salam produced. And that's why they said before us in order to enchant us. Okay, to enchant us. I definitely, I would say this time il-Mawdudi wins. We're not going to believe you. Yeah. Definitely. Il-Mawdudi wins this time. And they said to Moses, whatever sign you might produce before us in order to enchant us, we're not going to believe you. Let's see, Yusuf al-Ali. They said to Moses, whatever be the signs thou bringest to work therewith thy sorcery on us. Man, that sounds like Shakespeare. Forget it. Okay. All right, let's see right there. Litasharana. And certainly, did they actually necessarily believe that he was wanting to do magic? Well, to them, everything that had a supernatural presentation and an evil motive, they basically regarded it as magic or sorcery. All right, so let's see right there. Why did they use that word? لِتَصْرِفَنَا عَمَّا نَحْنُ عَلَيْهِ. They considered that the main motive is that Prophet Musa alayhi salam just wanted them to stay away from truth, to stay away from what they are doing. Well, what were they doing that they're so fond of? Certainly, number one is that the religious practices that they were doing in service to the grand king Pharaoh. And number two, certainly that was bringing to them all that interest in serving their interest, bringing in income, bringing in, I guess, a life full of ease, because at the end, there's a system. So in other words, they're benefiting from the system. They're benefiting from the system of enslaving a certain group of people, worshiping this Pharaoh and all those idols. So there was a certain benefit that they certainly did not want to give up on. And certainly that to give up on it actually meant changing the whole system, which certainly can mean an economical system basically going against their favor, or probably a whole culture that they did not want to give up on. I want you to emphasize a little bit on that one, which is that they did not want to give up on a certain culture that they're so used to. And this is very common. It is part of our programming that once we get used to a certain discipline, we try to fight anything new. We don't want to start anything new. We don't want to start a new system, but not until we discipline our brain to start a new system, and we force our brain to start a new system and we're committed to it. Not until then will we actually change our identity and who we are. But in the beginning, your brain wants to fight off, your body wants to fight off getting into a new system, even if that was the deen itself. So if you put in maybe a new regimen of waking up in the middle of the night praying 2 rakahs. Your body will try and attempt to stop you from doing that. No, don't do those 2 rakahs. That's what your body does not want. But certainly it is jihad of the nafs. That's why Islam was always emphasizing on jihad and on that inner struggle, because if you stay within your comfort zone, you're never going to achieve. So fight your comfort zone and get up to do those 2 rakahs during the night. 2 rakahs during the night. Yes, it's going to take some sleep away. It's going to get you out of your comfort zone. Just 2 rakahs. Start out with 2 rakahs. Don't do 100 in one day. Start out with 2 rakahs and make that a daily regimen. And then you're probably later on going to add that I'm going to be donating, let's say, an amount of money, maybe $100 every month. Let's just assume $100 every month. This is what I can afford. Donate $100 every single month and make that this is a commitment, that this is something that I have to do. And certainly your body is going to fight it off. The more committed you are, and even if it's a small amount, that's why the Prophet ﷺ was letting us know that khayrul amal, the best of the deeds, are basically adwamuhu wa inqal, are the ones that stay longer, even if they're a small regimen, even if they're a small amount, but the one that stays longer. So if you are to donate, let's say $50, okay, and for a whole year, that would be better than donating $100 or $300 one month and then forgetting all the other months. But trying to stay consistent. Okay, so let's see right there. The most important thing that the people of Qawm Fir'aun, that they were worried about, is the change of that system, is to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually means that the system of faith and belief and culture was going to be basically dismantled right before their eyes. Let's see right there. We did talk about some of the things. It was mentioned, and we had said that the word, when they would use the word, when he uses the word qila, which is a passive voice, that would give me an indication that some of it is actually, let's call it, not verified and not necessarily backed up by, let's say, accurate evidence. And let's see, he said, Musa alayhi salam stayed with al-Qibt. Who's al-Qibt? Al-Qibt are not necessarily Christian, okay? Al-Qibt, they're basically the people, the natives that had lived in Egypt. They're the natives that lived in Egypt, and they stayed. Prophet Musa alayhi salam stayed with them basically after the magicians, they went into prostration. He said they stayed there. Prophet Musa alayhi salam stayed with them for 20 years, showing them the different signs until the Pharaoh was basically drowned. And that was what they had said. In other words, they insisted on not wanting to believe. But here's one thing. You could see Al-Qurtubi said the word qila to indicate that it's not necessarily something verified, but he just wanted you to know that there was such a word, such a claim, such an inference that was said, but he doesn't have any evidence to support that Prophet Musa alayhi salam stayed in Egypt for 20 years after that is. So he was a prophet at the age of 40. Did he stay 20 years in Egypt after the age of 40, after he had become basically a prophet? Did he stay for 40 years? Was it 15? Was it 10? Was it 5? Who knows? We don't actually have any evidence to support that. Let's see. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, as a result, which is actually very interesting that we could see even when he had talked about Prophet Lut, Prophet Salih alayhi salam, Nuh, etc., all of them, whenever they had reached to the point that there's no going back on to them, They're not going to embrace it, da'wah. They're not going to embrace tawheed. They're not going to embrace those prophets. They're not going to believe. That's when the ayah would use the letter fa right there to mean it was an instant. It was an instant. It was an immediate thing. فأرسلنا عليهم الطوفان والجراد والقمل والضفادع والدم آيات مفصلات. Let's see right there. What does that mean? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had basically sent upon them الطوفان. الطوفان basically means flood. But we're going to see not all scholars would agree on the word الطوفان to mean flood. الجراد is locust, bigger than the grasshoppers, almost the size of half of my hand. Okay. القمل, lice. الضفادع, are القمل lice, or is it a small insect? We're going to look at it. And الضفادع, frogs or toads, and the dam is blood. And they're all آيات مفصلات. And I want you to look at this one. When it said آيات مفصلات, what are we looking at in terms of ayat and mufassalat? That's taking us back. When you look at the word ayat, that's also right there letting us know when they had said no matter what evidence, no matter what supernatural thing, no matter what punishment, i.e. you bring, we're not going to believe in it. That's what they had said. So now again, the word again, that basically is relating to the previous word that appeared in the ayah. That way we would know that this word, وَقَالُوا مَهْمَا تَأْتِنَا مِنْ آيَةٍ, that it would include curse. Because even this one, ayat and mufassalat, meaning that it was a curse. It was a supernatural thing. It was a curse that they had basically witnessed. فاستكبروا وكانوا قوما مجرمين. But certainly they had been arrogant, and they certainly were transgressors. But here's one thing. Al-Qurtubi, being a book of course, Ayat al-Ahkam, and a book for tafsir, but a different type of tafsir. A tafsir focused on the different verses that have ahkam, that have rulings. Mind you, there are 6,236 ayahs in the Quran. 300 to 700 ayat relate to legislature. All the other relate to aqidah. All the other relate to aqidah. So, of course, al-Qurtubi wanted to actually use this ayah in order to talk about some of the things that relate to legislation. And he said there are 5 different matters to discuss on this ayah. Number 1, he said, it was narrated, look at his name, Israel an Simak. Israel, is that like Israel? No. Israel is another name for Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam. Was he necessarily a previous perhaps maybe Jew? Maybe. He was one of the people of the book and then later became Muslim. Possibly, most likely. And عن نوف الشامي قال مكث موسى عليه السلام في آل فرعون بعدما غلب السحرة 40 عاما. Here's a different opinion. That Prophet Musa alayhi salam, after defeating basically the Pharaoh, and after the magicians had prostrated, that Prophet Musa alayhi salam stayed there for 40 years. It's quite ironic to actually say 40 years, but at the end of the day, we don't really have any evidence. Let's say another narration said it was for 20. And that part of those supernatural things that he had shown them was number 1, the locust, the lice, the frogs, and the blood. Let's see right there what he said. He said, Abu Nu'aym fil Hulya. Abu Nu'aym fil Hulya. So, Hulyat al-Awliya is actually almost 10 volumes. It's not too big, 10 volumes. Okay. And Abu Nu'aym, he basically can mention a lot of stories. Okay, and not necessarily always authentic. But let's see what he said. As for the word, here's number 2. As for the word at-tufan, He basically said that means well, strong rain until or to the point that they basically had floated over this rain. So it was basically a flood. Okay, let's see. The second opinion. The second opinion, you could see Mujahid and Ata. Nice name. Mujahid is a nice name. And Ata. Ata ibn Abi Rabah. We talked about him before. He said, It-Tufan is certainly, we're speaking about a word that basically means flood, but this is actually talking about death. So was it diseases that happened that started affecting people? It was contagious and many people were dying. That's an opinion right there. And plus, we have a resource for that. And it was actually mentioned by al-Tabari that it was actually referring to death happening onto them. Let's see. Al-Akhfash. Yes, this one's quite interesting. Tufana is one. Never heard of that, to be honest. Don't want to get into that detail because I'm not specialized in Lughah Arabiya, but this one, I'd never heard of Tufan. I know Tufan. All right, okay. So Nahas said, right, see, that Tufan was so strong, that is the flood, that it basically would mean that any death as a result of a major flood, meaning as a result of these people drowning, and therefore it was coming from the etymology of what basically would make everything float on it and then destruct them. That's the etymology of it. That يُطِيفُ بِهِمْ فَيُهْلِكُهُمْ. That it would make them float and then eventually basically kill them. That's so scary. Let's see another one. As-Suddi is a scholar in Qira'at and a scholar in Lugha Arabiya as well. He said that Bani Israel, not a single drop of water happened to them. In other words, they weren't included in this destruction, in the flood. But in fact, it went into the homes of al-Qibta, into the homes of the basically the people of Egypt, until that water was so high and it reached their throat. And it stayed basically there for 7 days. I don't know why I can't help but think of that flood that happened in Libya. Wasn't the place called Darna or something like that? Am I right? That was extremely sad. I think they were talking about the flood covering all their homes and even their apartment buildings. Everything was basically wiped to the ground. And certainly that was not necessarily all, as a result of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had, the rain that had poured, but it was also a result of the dam that was put there and that was not undergoing any renovation. Wasn't it Darna? Was that the place that it was done in, that it happened to? I forgot that flood and where did it happen to? I can't help, man, that was so, let's see, flood, Libya, right? Where did it happen? The Derna, I'm right. There you go. It happened in Derna. And that was so sad. Let me show you that really quick. And those homes, look at those. That's what happened. You're looking at that Dirna right there and how it basically was affected by all those that flood and all that water that was coming at them. And over 5,000 were dead. Ya Allah, over 5,000 were dead. It was very sad. It became like a ghost home in a place that they basically were living, considered an upper class. And Allah al-Musta'an, Ya Rabbi. Okay, let's see. Certainly the other flood that we can remember is the tsunami. That one, 235,000, was it? I think it happened in 2004 or something like that. And that was extremely sad. Over 235,000 people were drowned as a result of that tsunami. I wonder if it's 2001 or 2004, but one of those. And it was a tsunami that affected over, I think it was 35 countries. Not only, even though the most affected area was called Banda Aceh in Indonesia, but then it affected all the way to Kenya and Somalia. So you're looking at the main earthquake happened in, well, pretty much, within the area of Banda Aceh. So you're looking at a certain part in Indonesia, but then the floods, they were so massive that they affected all these countries. You're looking at all those countries, India and Thailand, Cambodia, all those countries were affected, over 35 countries. And the waves reached all the way, killing, I believe it was 12 people, if I recall correctly. In Somalia, 12 people, basically, you're looking all the way, those waves basically affecting all the way in Africa. And it was, ya Allah, very, very sad thing. But when you look at it, Tufan itself, you're looking at a flood and how vast it can happen. By the way, the other question is, was the flood that happened during Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, did that affect the whole planet Earth, or was this specific to one specific geographical area? Differences of opinions between scholars, just a note. Okay, differences of opinions between scholars. But right now, let's get to what he was saying here. He said that the children of Israel did not get any of that water, but in fact penetrated the Qibt, meaning the Coptics, meaning basically the Egyptians that were there, and they had that water basically flooding for 7 days, and some actually said it was for 40 days. And then they went to Prophet Musa alayhi salam, asking him to uplift basically this flood or this curse, and make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or make the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And certainly this flood ended, but they still didn't believe. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had basically had brought, as a result of this flood, some certain vegetation that was not there from before. And they said that all of this water was not actually a curse, but it was actually a blessing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent, this one's quite interesting. So the tufan, or the flood, basically brings in new vegetation. The new vegetation, they all of a sudden see it as, look, this is a blessing after all. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the locust to eat up all that vegetation that was there. What is a locust anyways? Let's look at a locust. So we said, yeah, let's see, locust. Looks like a grasshopper. Definitely, big one. I think I only had seen 2 or 3 in my life, not too many. Okay, not too many. You could see right there. Let's see, what size are they? They're like half your palm, half the size of your palm. Okay, enough about our friend right there. Let's see. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the locust, and certainly the locust started eating up their vegetation, eating up that vegetation they basically got as a result of all that flood. But those locusts, they started not only eating their vegetation, but it started even eating their own homes and basically their place of living. But none of that affected Bani Israel. Let's see right there. We're seeing that as mentioned in Tafseer al-Tabari and Ara'is al-Majalis. We did talk about Ara'is al-Majalis before. We said Ara'is al-Majalis for al-Tha'alibi, and we said that that book has all these stories that a lot of times they would be mentioning these stories about the prophets, but we did mention that 90% of it almost is actually not based on authentic evidence. It's really fun to read, very, very fun to read, very fascinating, okay? But we don't actually have evidence to support or even verify and be able to verify what is actually in it. So a lot of these prophetic stories that come from Ara'is al-Majalis, and they'll really go in lots of details, but it's not necessarily based on evidence. So we wouldn't necessarily use it as a reference to know all these details about prophets. Let's see, number 3. Look at the number 3 one. He said, scholars had differences of opinions on whether it is permissible to kill the locust if the locust would basically come on a specific land and even cause harm. Wait a minute. So we're not allowed, I know they don't use DDT anymore, but at least some chemical, and spread that chemical and spray it basically to make sure that these locusts don't come over. Is that, you're saying it's haram? For real? Let's see. Other scholars, they said that it would be permissible. So they had differences of opinions on whether it is permissible. They used to use something called DDT before, right? DDT. And then that was made illegal because of all the harm it was doing. And then they started using another type of, I guess, spraying in order to keep basically those products, but not those harmful insects. So they do use another type of a spray. Let's see. So some scholars actually said that that is permissible to kill the locust, and other scholars actually said it is not permissible. But all the وقال أهل الفقه كلهم يقتل. But all the scholars of fiqh actually said we can kill it. Okay. So scholars had differences of opinions, but the scholars of fiqh actually said, yes, we can kill it. Because guess what? If you don't kill it, that can actually mean the locusts attacking your crops, every single thing that they see, and they come in massive numbers. They come in massive numbers, and once they come in massive numbers, they're just going to be eating every single green thing they see. Let's see, what is the evidence? The first group of scholars, they said it is one of the magnificent creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's just eating like you. In other words, it's eating to survive. And therefore, it is not held accountable. So in order to somehow suffocate it, kill it, I don't know, spray it, all of that, they said, well, we even have a hadith. لا تقتلوا الجراد فإنه جند الله الأعظم. Here's a hadith. So you've got a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, do not kill the locusts, for they are the soldiers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's see number 3. And they said, we're going to make the story short for you. This is a weak hadith. This is a weak hadith. So we're able to kill it? Well, this is a weak hadith if it's not strong evidence. Let's see, the majority of the scholars, they actually said it is permissible to kill it. So whether you're going to spray it or whether you're going to perhaps maybe use a different method to stop those locusts from attacking the society and or attacking all that those resources. Let's see. They said their evidence was that if you were to leave the locusts basically attacking the vegetation, attacking all people's wealth, then that would be a dangerous thing. It would make no sense to leave these animals, or well, not animals, but these insects basically attacking people's wealth. And if the Prophet ﷺ had permitted to kill, even if it's a Muslim, if they were to take your wealth, then certainly the locust, if they had attempted to harm your wealth, you have the right to defend your wealth. Whether that was a person, a human being coming to attack your wealth, or whether that was a locust. And certainly we would look and see that it would be imperative basically to kill a locust if it was going to harm and certainly ruin your crops. They also had agreed, all the scholars agreed, that it would be permissible to kill a snake or even a scorpion because they would harm people. So how is al-jarad and a locust different? If we're capable of killing a scorpion or a snake or a mouse because it would be harming people, why would we consider the life of a locust having a higher level of sanctity over those insects? Let's see. Ibn Majah عن جابر وأنس بن مالك. So we have two Sahaba that narrate this hadith. أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان إذا دعا على الجراد قال اللهم أهلك كباره واقتل صغاره وأفسد بيضه واقطع دابره وخذ بأفواهه عن معايشنا وأرزاقنا إنك سميع الدعاء. قال رجل يا رسول الله كيف تدعو على جندا من أجناد الله بقطع دابره؟ قال إن الجراد نثرة الحوت في البحر. نثرة الحوت في البحر. Okay, let's see right there. First of all, this hadith basically has this narrator, Musa ibn Muhammad al-Taymi, and some scholars actually said he's not authentic and in fact discouraged writing the hadith. Al-Bukhari commented on one of the chain of narrators and they said that he had manakir. Manakir is not nail polish. Manakir basically means that some of the chain of narrations that he was narrating off of were actually vague and ambiguous people and therefore unverified. Has nothing to do with nail polish. Let's see right there. So regardless that this hadith is not necessarily authentic, let's see what was the Prophet ﷺ, at least according to that hadith, even though it's not authentic, but let's see what it says. That the Prophet ﷺ was making a dua, Ya Allah, destruct the big ones, kill the small ones, and basically ruin its eggs and bring an ending to all the offspring of those locusts. And close its mouth away from our resources and our provisions. You are the one to respond and hear the invocation. A man said, O Prophet of Allah, how would you make an invocation against one of the armies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to actually make the dua that it would never reproduce? So the Prophet ﷺ said that the locust is basically nathratul huti fil bahr. What is an-nathra? An-nathra is when something is laid out. Laid out, and therefore that it would basically be affecting the earth, basically. So just like you would have the earth or the sea basically blowing and spraying in that way. Same thing, you're looking at al-jarad, you're looking at locusts. Just give me a second. Just 1 second, please. All right, now one thing is that when we speak about certainly al-jarad, the scholars actually had differences of opinions on eating al-jarad. Let's see. It was narrated in Sahih Muslim that عن عبد الله بن أوف بن أبي أوفى قال غزونا مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 7 غزوات كنا نأكل الجراد معه. That the Prophet ﷺ had or the Sahaba, they had invaded and went on to different battles In fact, 7 battles that they used, and their meal consisted of locusts. And they were eating, so the Prophet ﷺ himself was actually eating locust with them. Of course, that actually brings the question. Is locust permissible to eat? If the Prophet ﷺ was eating it, can we consider that was, I guess, a dire need, and this dire need basically would make it as الضرورات تبيح المحظورات? Or what would it mean? Well, certainly in the previous hadith, when he said that الجراد نثرة الحوت في البحر, that's exactly like the splash of a whale, basically. Meaning it's like it, and therefore it takes the same commonality that it would be permissible to consume. And the Prophet ﷺ consumed it himself. So scholars did not have differences of opinions. This is what al-Qurtubi is saying. Did not have differences of opinions that it is permissible to eat. It's not my preferred diet. And in Palestine, we never eat it. At least my grandfather did tell me that they did used to eat it long ago when they were going through some dangerous drought. But it wasn't at all something that we consumed as within our culture. I do know in Palestine, we do have certain people, mainly Christians, actually eating snails. Snails are poisonous. My son is telling me snails are poisonous. I don't know which snails they choose, but some people actually eat snails. But, I'm not going to talk about the snails right now. But then the question is, if we wanted to eat a locust, are we going to do a dhabiha? Or are we going to do? Let's say the first opinion, that if you were to take it alive and then you basically chopped off its head and you basically eat the rest, that would be permissible. Sorry if some of you are disgusted. So am I. This is not at all my part of my spaghetti and locust sauce. No, it's not. I never ate locust, and I would absolutely never eat it whatsoever. But I still have to talk about this because some people, this is what they eat, okay? And we need to see what Islam says about it, okay? Let's see right there. And that some scholars actually considered that by chopping off its head, that basically acts as making it a dhabiha. Just like you would do a dhabiha. Just like when you're talking about, let's say, the crabs and lobsters, they put them in hot water, soak them in hot water. So that's their dhabiha, basically, in order to kill them. You don't smash them, but you just soak them in hot water, and that's how they basically die. Of course, scholars had differences of opinions on eating shelled animals or shelled creatures, okay? For the Hanafi madhab, that's not permissible. Eating shelled creatures, for the Hanafi madhab, that's not permissible. For the other madhab, it's permissible. It's a sea animal, at least. It's permissible. And we did talk about things like roaches and all of that, so no need to go into that again. Let's see. They had differences of opinions. Does it necessarily need to be killed by perhaps maybe us hunting for those locusts, or how do we actually deal with it? And or can we just eat it while it's alive? Or do we just eat it however we want and we don't have to chop off the head per se, because it takes the same ruling as whales? And that's the opinion of Ibn Nafi' and Mutarrif. Those are Maliki scholars, just to let you know. Let's see, Imam Malik, he basically said there has to be a reason to, how it's going to be dying, whether it's cutting off its head or cutting off its legs or probably its wings. And if it dies as a result of that, or probably even soaking it in hot water, or probably putting it directly, frying it and sauteing it or whatever it is. They said, well, it's permissible to do that. That's definitely not my diet. Trust me, I absolutely do not feel good talking about this. Aisha Lee, go ahead, dear. Aisha Lee, do you eat locusts?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay.
I'm
Some
trying.
food has them.
I don't eat them. But you did mention something about like if it's the same opinion as whales. So what is that opinion?
The opinion on whales.
Yeah,
So
you can eat it.
whales are permissible to eat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whales are permissible to eat. And certainly, whether we're speaking about whales that are carnivore whales or whales that basically eat other vegetation. So remember, even when we're talking about sea animals, some sea animals would feed on other fish, carnivores, just like sharks.
Mm-hmm.
Other animals would feed on what is that stuff called? The basically the plants in the sea. What is that?
Like the algae.
Plankton. Plankton. The whales eat plankton.
Okay. So basically feed on the different vegetation that's there. All right. Now, some whales, they would actually feed on fish, just like the killer whale. Right? The killer whale eats seals, fish, etc. Yeah, sure, it will play all these games with it before it kills it and eats it up. All right. But at the end of the day, it's a carnivore. All right. What about the other whales? They might not uh eat other fish, but they eat perhaps that plant stuff in the sea. Okay, so that's that differences of opinions. So just like when it comes to whales and when it comes to sea animals, some scholars, very few, not too many, so don't confuse yourself. Okay, very few scholars actually said that if it's a carnivore sea animal, it would not be permissible. The majority said even if it's a carnivore sea animal, if it's a sea animal, whether it's a part-time sea animal or a full-time sea animal, that it would basically be permissible to eat. So what are we talking about? We're talking about certain sea animals that part-time are living there. We're talking about, let's give an example, amphibians, crocodiles. Is that permissible to eat or not? Do we consider that a sea animal or is that considered a part-time animal? Let's see the other one. What is that animal? That hippopotamus. You put a big, huge watermelon and it crushes it instantly. Boom. It's kind of funny that it eats all that vegetation, but then it basically is overweight. Well, yeah, I don't know. It's really making me doubt all that dietary stuff that they're telling us. But anyhow, that's a different story. All right. So is it permissible to eat hippopotamus? Okay. Is it a sea animal? It lives in the water, but it also lives on land, part-time at least. But generally, it's a water animal. So that's that area of differences of opinions. Okay.
Okay.
That's that area of differences of opinions. Those animals that are part-time or animals that are carnivores, because in general, the Prophet ﷺ had forbid eating carnivore animals. So that's a fact. The Prophet ﷺ forbid that we eat carnivore animals. All right. When he forbid eating carnivore animals, does that include sea carnivores? That's that question. Because the Prophet ﷺ made it clear that الحل ميت الماء أو الطهور ماءه والحل ميتته, that the water, its water is basically pure, and the animals that basically are in it, they're permissible to consume. So some scholars actually said, well, this is a comprehensive statement, therefore any sea animal is permissible to consume. But then they debated, okay, if you're talking about any sea animal, what if it's a part-time sea animal? A frog. I don't want to get into frogs, okay, because we did talk about that detail about frogs before, but we're speaking about other sea animals that are part-time or even full-time. So when we talk about differences of opinions on that, just keeping that one in mind. Okay, go ahead. There was somebody else that wanted to say something.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته sister
Walaikum assalam wa
Aisha.
rahmatullah. Go ahead, dear.
Sorry sister, I was trying to ask you something like one time this lady, she was like, oh, don't eat shrimp because shrimp it's not healthy because they eat everything at the bottom of the sea, and I like to eat shrimp and I don't know what to do, like
Okay,
should I just
so shrimp
get rid
actually
of
has
them?
differences of opinions between scholars. Remember, it's a shell, it's an animal that has shell. Does it consume other and feed on the different things? Is it healthy? You know, healthy or not is not what I'm going to discuss because that's not my area of specialty. Is it halal or not is the area. Okay, halal or not, that's that again, differences of opinions between scholars. For the Hanafi madhab, they do not eat it because they consider it a shell animal or a shell creature. Okay, so they don't feed on shell creatures. For the non-Hanafis, they considered that no, it's a sea animal, and regardless of what it eats on and how it feeds on fish waste and all of that, at the end of the day, it's a sea animal. So the other scholars that considered it that, hey, it's a sea animal, therefore I can consume it. So the majority actually said it was permissible. Okay, regardless of all of what it consumes, that hey, it's a sea animal, and yes, it has a shell, but there isn't an authentic hadith that actually forbid eating animals or creatures that because of a shell that they have. Okay, let's see here. Al-Layth used to hate. Who's Al-Layth? Al-Layth is a scholar that it was actually said that he was even more scholarly than Malik himself. His name is Al-Layth ibn Sa'd, and that he used to hate eating the dead locust unless that locust was taken alive and then it was killed. And therefore that was considered the dhabiha of it. And that's Sa'id ibn Musayyib as well. Let's see Daraqutni. He said that Ibn Umar had said that the Prophet ﷺ had said, here's that phrase that I had said before, أُحِلَّ لَنَا مَيْتَتَانِ الْحُوتُ وَالْجَرَادُ وَدَمَانِ الْكَبِدُ وَالطِّحَالِ. That the Prophet ﷺ said there were two different things that the dead of it, in other words, the deceased of it, is permissible to consume. Number one, that's speaking about whales and locust. And there were two bloods that we were permitted to eat. Bloods, because in general, you're not permitted to eat blood. So here it's talking about al-kabid, eating basically liver. Eating liver. Whose liver? We're talking about chicken liver, goat liver, that you can actually eat that. And الطحال. الطحال is, what is الطحال? What? No, الطحال is not kidney. Hold on, let's see. الطحال, I keep confusing that. الطحال, see right there. So the الطحال right there. And what is that in English? Hold on. And we're going to get that, okay? In English. We're going to find it in English. English, here we go. Okay, it didn't actually give me the meaning in English. We're going to find it. I know we can find it. This is a tahad. This isn't. This, help me, people. Give me, we're going to find it. A tahad, this is what you wrote me, okay? And It really doesn't want to give me that, right? Spleen. This is what it is. It's the spleen. I don't eat any of that. Remember, I'm generally a vegetarian, but we're just letting you know. So we're speaking about eating the spleen of chicken, goats, maybe camels, all of that. Let's see, Ibn Majah had said that the Prophet ﷺ's wives, that they used to give each other plates of locust as gifts. So they would eat it then, and you could see the Sunan Ibn Majah. And Ibn al-Mundhir mentioned that as well in al-Ishraf. Okay. Let's see on number 5 right there. So is it permissible to eat locust? There's no question about it. Yes, there is. Is it obligatory to cut off its head? Differences of opinions between scholars. Can we use different methods of soaking it in water, hot water, and probably smashing it, etc.? All of that is actually permissible. Is it something that considered a sunnah? Not necessarily a sunnah per se. A sunnah to mean recommended, no, but something that the Prophet ﷺ had practiced. The answer is yes. The Prophet ﷺ did practice something like that, but it was what was available then. Okay, let's say Muhammad ibn al-Munkadir عن جابر ibn Abdullah, that Umar ibn Khattab had said that he heard the Prophet ﷺ say, إن الله تعالى خلق ألف أمة 600 منها في البحر و400 في البر وإن أول هلاك هذه الأمم الجراد فإذا هلكت الجراد تتابعت الأمم مثل نظام السلك إذا انقطع. Okay, let's see right there. الترمذي الحكيم, not الترمذي, the one that narrated الترمذي. He mentioned it in his book نوادر الأصول. But this hadith needs further revision. Let's see, what did he say? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had created the different nations into 1,000 nations. 600 of these nations are in the sea. 400 of these nations are on land. And the first nation to get destructed basically is the nation of locust. And once the locust is destructed, then all the other nations would get destructed and follow along exactly like a certain pattern when it basically ends. And you could say this was mentioned by Tirmidhi in Nawadir al-Usul. And let's see right there in what he said. He said, well, that chain of narration has Muhammad ibn Isa ibn Kaysan, and that al-Bukhari had said he was munkar al-hadith, meaning what? This hadith is actually not authentic. Abu Zur'a, had said that لا ينبغي أن يحدث عنه. It should not be right or permissible to actually narrate a hadith upon this person. Who's that person that they're talking about? They're talking about this guy, Muhammad ibn Isa ibn Kaysan. This guy, and letting us know that just because a narration is mentioned, it doesn't necessarily make it authentic. So now we know that there's a certain narrator in that narration, which makes it not a narration that we could use. Let's see. And of course, but al-Qurtubi wanted to comment on that, and he said the reason why they would be the first nation to get destructed was because they were created from the same material of clay that Prophet Adam alayhi salam was created from, and it was actually created to be subjugated to them. But of course, there's no evidence on that because the hadith itself is not authentic. So even that explanation still, since it's not based on authentic evidence, we don't necessarily have to comment on that. Let's see. Going back to al-Qibt right there, they promised Musa alayhi salam that if the locust issue basically is gone and that is all cleared up, and Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he basically made that invocation, and they had promised that they would be believers. And some of their plantation was still basically surviving. So they said, that's enough for us as as a resource, but they still did not believe. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent the lice basically to attack them. Are we talking about the lice that grows on human hair, or what are we actually talking about? So the word al-qummal, scholars actually had differences of opinions on whether it is lice or whether it is just the different insects that basically are, so I'll put the word right there so we can actually see it, okay? It's a soos. They're called the soos. They're little small creatures. Sometimes you would find them basically in rice, you would find them in grains, just different foods, and this is it right there. This is it. Let's see, it's called rice root. Okay, is this what it's called? I guess this is the scientific word for it. I don't even know how to read it, so at least let's see a little guy, and this is what he looks like. You could see really happy, really looking cute. I mean, right there, small waist, and definitely looking very attractive. Yeah, so this is where our friend basically lives in, right there, and small head and very pointy nose, exactly the way that you would see, you know, the models right there. Pointy nose, small head, small waist, and definitely just the right creature for being a model. Anyhow, so right there. And this is where you would find our little guy basically living in. And oh, okay, so this is small eggs, which usually may be sifted even inside your food, and then basically becomes what is that called? The larva, or what do they call that? And then larva, okay. And then our little guy becomes this little pupa, okay. And then he becomes this big dude right there. Okay. Regardless, you can see our attractive looking little creature right there. So yes, this was that it, or was it the other guy? Let's see the other guy, and that other guy is called al-qamal, which basically means lice. So we're gonna see, this guy looks ugly. Okay, let's see what this guy looks like. Definitely ugly, definitely ugly. Okay, definitely ugly. So was it this little creature, or was it the other creature, which is that weird name that we couldn't read with this guy? What did we call him? Hold on, what did it say it was called? Let's see right there. Maybe we can get somewhere. Give me the translation right there. And let's say, I know you're going to give me different translations, but man, okay, here we go. These languages right there. Let's see in English. I guess in English, they don't know this creature, but seriously? No, I know they do know it. Hold on. This is what this guy is called. Licorice root. I guess that's a scientific name for it. Okay, so we're not going to discuss our little creature. Never mind him. Let's see here. So that was basically what came attacking their resources. Again, they were getting their resources basically now attacked either by locust, and now we're looking at most likely it was our little creature, this guy, who was basically attacking their resources, their food resources. Okay, so it wasn't al-qummal to mean lice attacking their hair, but it was that little creature that would attack their grains, basically. Let's see. Other scholars actually said it's al-baraghith. This one's quite interesting. Why al-baraghith? I'm going to go right there and actually show you al-baraghith. Al-baraghith, al-baraghith. Let's see, I hope I get something. Okay, no, that's not what it is. Hold on. We're going to get there. Man, al-baraghith. Sorry, but my laptop doesn't have. Here we go. And find him. This is al-baraghith. Absolutely boring to deal with because he can really attack and can really harm. Let's see, this is the guy. It's a flea. For real? I thought the fleas were the cousins of, a lice. let's see, whatever that word is. I can never read that one. And the font is horrible. I can't even see it. So again, now you see our little creature. Okay, does not look good at all whatsoever. So let's skip them. Okay, let's see. So that was according to Ibn Zayd. Ibn Zayd is a Maliki scholar. He said that this was actually al-Barghuth, that little flea creature. And Al-Hasan said, Dawabun Sudun Sigar. So now I guess he was talking about this little creature that we talked about earlier that goes into the grains. And let's say right there. So regardless, all right, of which kind of a creature at the end of the day is that certainly there were these creatures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent onto the people of Egypt for going against Prophet Musa alayhi salam. So whether we're speaking about creatures that were attacking their grains or attacking their body or attacking them, at the end of the day, it was basically mentioned in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had basically sent all these creatures on them to attack their resources. Let's see right there. Some Mufassirin had actually said that Musa alayhi salam, okay, let's see, that Musa alayhi, that there was a vast amount of sand dune, and then Musa alayhi salam hit it with his cane, and it became a qummal. It became that flea, or it became that lice, and that this lice basically, but there's no evidence on that. Let's look at the number one right there. He said, أخرجه الطبري من قول سعيد. That's not necessarily a reference to go back to. Let's see, in another qira'ah, al-qaml, not al-qummal, but al-qaml sent al-qaml. So, of course, at the end of the day, regardless of which creature that is, they basically they went to Prophet Musa alayhi salam, asking him to invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to uplift basically all the curse that had come to them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then certainly lets us know that they still didn't believe. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the toads and frogs. Toads and frogs, they usually are in water. And the Prophet ﷺ had forbid killing toads and frogs in an authentic hadith. Why? Because it makes dua, tasbih. Abu Hurairah had narrated that the Prophet ﷺ had forbid killing a surad, والضفدع والنملة والهدهد. So hold on, how many things are those? Those are 4 things that were not permitted to kill. Let's look at those 4 things. Number 1 is a surad. And what is a surad? A surad is a kind of a bird. This is the surad. Cute little bird. This is a surad. There is a hadith that surad, it was also protecting the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. This is a surad. So the Prophet ﷺ forbid eating this little creature. Let's see the other creatures. Who are they? الضفدع. Well, I mean, we know what frogs and toads are. النملة, ants. Forbid eating ants. And forbid eating al-hudhud. Let's see what al-hudhud looks like. Al-hudhud. This is al-hudhud. Right there. Right there. This is al-hudhud. Hoopoe bird? Is that what it's called? Hoopoe. Okay. Well, I hope I read the name right. So why these ones? Is surad because it protected and started basically accompanying Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. الضفدع was because of the tasbih that it was making. النملة because of Surah al-Naml. الهدهد was because of that hudhud and in honor of that hoopoe bird that was mentioned within the story of Prophet Sulaiman alayhi salam. Okay, hold on. But is this an authentic hadith? Hold on. Let's say that, so there's another one, which is a bee. It's not permissible to kill a bee. But what if I'm scared of it? What if I'm a person that has allergy to bee stings, right? So should I attempt to kill the bee? Well, definitely I would not attempt to do so, because if I miss that target, because I'm definitely way bigger, and if I were to get stung by it, I will get an allergy reaction and not a pleasant thing to deal with. Let's see right there. الحديث أورده المصنف, and he said it was narrated by Ibn Majah, Muhammad ibn Bashar, وعبد الرحمن ibn عبد الوهاب, وليس عن Muhammad ibn Yahya. So a different chain of narration. And basically letting us know, go to Tuhfat al-Ashraf, and didn't actually tell us whether this is authentic or not. And to be honest, I forgot to review the hadith. I'm going to do some homework later on and actually see whether this hadith is authentic or not. I actually did not do my homework in regards to this hadith. I need to check it out. So this is one homework that we need to work on. Okay, let's see. النسائي عن عبد الرحمن أن طبيبا ذكر ضفدعا في دواء عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فنهاه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن قتله. Okay, so this man, I guess, was ill, and one doctor or a physician basically prescribed some kind of a medicine, but he recommended using frogs in this medication. But the Prophet ﷺ had forbid him from killing that frog. And you can see Sahahahu Abu Muhammad Abd al-Haq. Let's see what he says right there. He said, Al-Mujtaba, Ahmad, and Abu Dawud. Now, of course, if this hadith is authentic, that would actually mean if we are using something that is haram to eat in medication, even if the person is sick, they should not be using something that is haram to consume. That's a different question. Let's say right now they do heart transplant, and the heart transplant, they basically use some basically pieces of a pig. And it was found that pigs are basically the closest things to our certain things about our DNA and our cells and etc. And it would be safer to use basically the pig's substance. Is that permissible to use? Or is it because it's coming from a pig that it would be haram to use and therefore najis? And same thing if we're talking about marijuana. Some people that get seizures, epilepsy, that, hey, using marijuana, and it was helping some people. Should we use that? Is it permissible or is it not permissible? Yarhamkumullah. So generally speaking, if we have an alternative, then it would be obligatory to use the alternative. But if that is the only, or at least the best known treatment, even if it's a haram substance, it would be permissible. I did actually write a whole research on that. So inshallah, I'll share it for those interested. But we're not done, because we need to go over this hadith, and we need to go over this hadith and actually look at their level of authenticity. So inshallah, we'll talk about further in regards to these rulings. Are we permitted to consume such substances, even though they may have haram substances in them, yes or no. We're going to talk about the differences of opinions between scholars, and we're going to talk about certainly some more about those hadith and their level of authenticity. We're going to go to these resources for those great scholars that actually had verified these hadith. So for the time being, if there are any questions, my friends, go ahead. Oh, Surad is basically what, did I not show you that? Surad is basically this bird. This bird. And let me see if I can show you that bird, this guy. This is that Surad. That's the bird. And we're going to talk about him furthermore because we're going to see the hadith that is coming up right there that the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned some information about Is-Surad, and the scholars actually mentioned, of course, this is Abu Huraira mentioning the story, but that he was actually accompanying Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. So we're going to see, so if we have an evidence to prove that this bird Is-Surad right there was accompanying Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, just like the ayah had mentioned a special honor for the hupu bird, then will we actually say this hadith mentioning a special honor for this, what did we call this bird? What did we call this bird? I forgot what we called this little bird. What was his name in English anyways? As-Surad. Maybe I can take and see what Surah is in English. I have no idea, to be honest. I'm going to take this and I'm going to see what the bird's name is in English, right? I'm going to go right there and we're going to paste it, okay? And we're going to see, okay? We're going to see the name in English. And here we go. English. I have no idea what this name is. Surad. He said Surad, Free Lanes Lexicon. No, that's not its name. Hold on, I have no idea. Maybe I can put Wikipedia, maybe it can give me that. Shrike? I don't know why I'm thinking of, this is shrikes. This is what it's called. The family name and that of the larger genus. I have no idea what this is. Butcher, word from butcher. I don't know what that is, but anyhow, so this is white. This is the bird. Oh, this is the lizard after consuming that bird. Okay. So yeah, now you know our little right there. No, can't help but think of Star Trek right there if it's talking about shrikes. All right. If there are any questions, go ahead, my friends.
Yeah, I have a quick question. So regarding what you said about shrimps and other sea animals, does the same thing apply to farmed seafood animals? So for example, we have farmed shrimps now. They don't directly come from the sea, obviously. And
What did you find?
also,
Sorry, what did you
farmed
find?
fish and all of that. Farmed
Farmed
shrimps.
fish.
They do not come directly from the sea. They are farmed. Yeah,
But still, they're
farmed. Yeah.
considered
So
as
does the same
it's the same deer. So whether they're farmed or whether they're, I don't know, found in Alaska, it's the same thing.
Okay, so the same fatwas would apply to them.
Right. In terms of permissibility, it's permissible to consume it. In terms of health-wise, that's a different thing that's not my area of specialty to discuss.
That's clear.
All right. So, your salmon, I'm not sure if it's, all the different studies about the farm ones, the farm raised, and the ones that were caught in Alaska and whatever, all of those different things. That's a completely different, I guess, field, and speaking about its health. But in terms of Islam, it's permissible to eat both. All right, my dears. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop right there Sorry about that.
Alaikum Shakay Shawazwas. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure. Go ahead, dear.
The locust, so I don't ever, plan on ever eating it. Milan test us, but I'm just wondering, is that like the same thing as a grasshopper? So would they both be permissible to consume, like a locust and a grasshopper?
Is it the same, you mean?
Yeah, like they're both the same thing, right? Or are they different?
They're different. A grasshopper is different than a locust. Okay. So we don't do qiyas here and say, oh, this way, they're both coming and jumping up and down the same way. No, they're two different creatures. And certainly, you're not necessarily going to use qiyas here, but two different creatures. Now, scholars yet, just a note, did have differences of opinions on consuming things like grasshoppers, like cockroaches, okay?
Oh.
Or even, yeah, I know it's kind of funny to actually say that, but the reason, let me explain why they had differences of opinions. Because some scholars actually said, sorry, this may sound really disgusting. It sounds extremely disgusting to me myself as I speak about it, okay? But I still need to mention this, because you want to keep in mind that some of the products that you may be consuming, they're called M&Ms or they're called candies, but they're actually made of cockroaches, okay? Or at least not entirely, but they're made of some certain substances. They're made of cockroaches or certain insects, etc., okay? But certainly went through a lot of chemical changes and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, is that being as an ingredient in it, does it make it haram or not? That's the question. Does it make it haram or not? If I were to know that let's say E21, E whatever, these E numbers on in your candies, does that make it haram just to actually have that, even though I would know this E number? It's not just an E number, but it's actually made from certain insects. Scholars actually had differences of opinions on these insects. The reason why they had differences of opinions is because normally they feed on filth. So the first group of scholars that said that it was haram, they said anything that feeds on filth in general is basically something that is harmful, something that is not healthy, something that is disgusting, something that is not pure and therefore haram. The second opinion basically said, well, wait a minute, it doesn't have to feed on filth. What if we made sure that it was not feeding on filth, just like we have cockroach farms? So they would basically put them in this area, dark area, and they would have all these, very similar to that worm that does the silk. I forgot what it was called, but same thing, that they would have these farms, and we're going to have these farms to make sure that these cockroaches are feeding on things that are healthy, things that are not filthy, things that are basically, to us, we are the ones raising them. Is it permissible to eat these cockroaches? Is it permissible to eat these creatures? And if we made sure that they were feeding on good things and not on filthy stuff, that's that area of differences of opinions. So some scholars, they said, no, this stuff is disgusting. But here's one thing, is that some of those disagreements were not actually based on a specific hadith. We don't have a specific hadith that said eating cockroaches is haram or eating grasshoppers is haram. So then they debated the usuli qaida, which basically means it's a fundamental legal maxim. Is everything halal unless proven otherwise, or is everything haram unless proven otherwise? Is al-aslu fi al-ashya' al-ibaha, or is al-aslu fi al-ashya' al-tahrim? Differences of opinions between scholars. If you are to say that everything is to be halal unless proven haram, that would actually include, hey, I don't have any evidence to prove that roaches are haram, but it's a matter of how you read it. Meaning, You see it as filthy, and therefore you regard it as filthy, and therefore would avoid it and consider it as, well, it falls within the legal maxim that you're supposed to be avoiding something that is not clean. Just like we avoid anything that's not clean. Well, they're eating things that are not clean, therefore you're supposed to avoid that. Okay? And therefore, the scholars that may have went in certain details about certain animals that did not have a text to mention specifically whether it's halal or haram, that's when certainly you would see these scholars debating whether it does fall under this category of everything's halal unless proven otherwise, except this one is filthy, or whether, no, everything's haram unless you have a hadith that says it's halal, that's the only thing that you could eat. So can I eat a duck? You'll have some scholars actually say you cannot eat a duck. Can I eat an ostrich? Some scholars actually said, no, you cannot eat an ostrich. Why? Oh, because it's toe. It has a dhufr. It has basically the toenail, and therefore you cannot eat it. Other scholars, they said, well, this is not included. It's a bird. You see what I'm saying? So I'm just letting you know the conversation between the scholars and what this looks like.
Okay.
And why they would have differences of opinions. All right?
Jazakallah khair.
All right,
Thank you.
my friends. Bon appetit, right?
Oh, one more thing. Can you share
ahead.
that article you wrote about?
Sure.
I would love
WhatsApp
to.
me. I will have to dig
Okay.
for it. It was actually, you know what? I think you can find it. What screen am I sharing with you right there? Oh, I thought I was sharing a screen. Oh, you guys, ladies, you should have told me that I was not sharing that screen with you. Hold on. Let me show you. Okay. I'm going to show you that. What was it? Oh, yeah. Let's see right there. And I think it was Amja. Let me see. I know Amja. And let me see if they have it there. Here we go. This is it. This is the article. You'll find it on Amja online. There you go. Mine is oh, here we go. This is mine. The principles guiding hospice care in Islamic law. And if you want the actual thing, I'll be happy to give that to you. So
Okay.
right before Yasir Khadi's article, this is my article right there. Okay?
Jazakallah khair.
وإياكم. So inshallah, we'll see you all tomorrow inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ربي يحفظكم جميعا, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يرضى عنكم جميعا. Hold on. We're going to